All right, hello. Today I'll be going over the show Dexter. I'll be going over the character Dexter Morgan, which you can see right there, and he has antisocial personality disorder. So, starting off with the description, Dexter is a middle-aged forensic analyst in Miami, Florida. He's a serial killer, but he only kills those who have killed innocent people, so he's not inherently evil in the show. This was taught to him by his adoptive dad in order to control his demons. In order to stay safe, his dad taught him a code which involved heavily keeping himself and avoiding human contact, heavily keeping to himself and avoiding human contact. This led to isolation, and as you can see with anyone who avoids interaction, you do not develop key skills and social skills. I think that's pretty common. He does not struggle with the serial killer part, but he struggles most having a normal life because he doesn't know how to be a normal human to those close to him. Moving on to another description, he is surrounded by family who loves him and friends who like his company. Everyone is none the wiser to who he really is. Obviously, he hides that very, very well. He is married and has two stepchildren and one of his own with his wife Rita. He's a stable job that he loves that assists in controlling his aforementioned demons. He's a forensic analyst. He goes about figuring out how to be normal by hunting other serial killers in order to see how they function in society and balance their family life with their desires. So he learns from other people throughout the show. This leads to a never-ending cycle of him learning new things that then introduces new issues, so it is a snowball effect throughout the show. Moving on to the diagnosis, I picked antisocial personality disorder. So, describing the slides of chapter 15 as characterized by complete lack of regard for other people's rights or feelings, Dexter's childhood is the main factor for him being the way that he is and causing him to not know how to be normal. His dad was his idol, and as the show goes on, he slowly finds more and more about him that changes how he feels about him. He finds out that his dad was not an innocent cop, but rather a very flawed man who cheated on his wife with his biological mom. Ultimately, Dexter finds out that his dad killed himself because he could no longer handle the guilt of what he created in Dexter. Moving on to another diagnosis slide, Dexter does not actually he does go to a therapist initially because he was a murderer himself. Um, he then actually uses it to his advantage to try to get some help. At first, would not open up, and then he realized he could actually help him. Dexter asked very simple questions about emotions and how to be intimate with a partner, which at the time was the biggest struggle. A serious relationship meant that he would break the rule of being so close to someone and being around them so often that Henry taught him his dad that code. Dexter has no filter and does not know what to say and does not know why people react to him being blunt or too honest. He never gets a diagnosis from the therapist, but if he did, it could be a number of disorders, but it would primarily be antisocial personality disorder since no one knows about the serial killer aspect of him. Moving on to another diagnosis slide. I think this disorder is probably the most diagnosed in the US, if I had to guess, compared to the other big countries. So many other cultures have families as such an important factor, as well as religion all over the world, creating social events and causing you to go out consistently. In the US, you have so much hate in social media that causes people to not want to be themselves, and so many people recluse themselves. On top of that, you have so many family issues in America causing children to be underdeveloped and not learning any social skills from the parents since all the issues with the nuclear family going away. In a PubMed study from 2005, we can see that 12.3% of adults display this type of antisocial behavior. Moving on to, I think, the last diagnosis slide, I think particularly in the US, you could be seen as crazy, much like any mental disorder. I think this is getting better and better as time goes on, people become more aware of mental health. It doesn't have any tie to politics or race or religion, so it avoids any agendas and is not subject to the normal scrutiny. You would just be seen as weird or scary and creepy if you were being diagnosed with this disorder, just like many other ones. Starting with evidence, Dexter fits 7 of the 9 symptoms on the slides from chapter 15. The only two that he does not display are irritability and aggressiveness and overinflated sense of self. Dexter displays impulsivity time and time again throughout the show whenever he discovers a soon-to-be victim of his. He is not reckless, but once he has proof, he cannot help himself to carry through with it. In the second PubMed study, we can see that the participants had 11.6 point higher rate of impulsivity than those with ASPD. Dexter does not display any symptoms of an inflated sense of self. He quite often talks down about himself with his inner monologue, often saying things like, "Why can't I be like him or her?" when looking at people that effortlessly interact with other people. For example, he meets this serial killer that has a family and doesn't struggle with being around them and tending to their needs, and he becomes obsessed with that. Moving on to treatment, I think that I would go about is trying to figure out as much as possible from truth from his childhood in order to try to get to him to connect the dots and allow him to understand himself better. Since childhood plays such a bigger role in causing people to develop this disorder, of course, that correlation with his disorder also connects to violence, much like other people with this disorder. The most obvious thing that hinders this is the fact that he is a serial killer. He can never truly open up to anybody. So the number one rule his dad gave him is to never get caught. This makes it basically impossible for someone to get close to him and help him, so he has to learn by observing and reflecting on others. Moving on to another treatment slide. For actual treatment, I would have a clinical psychologist provide cognitive behavioral therapy on CBT to Dexter. Have him go through the cycle of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors over and over again, not only to help with him committing violence, but also in hopes to think that he would learn a lot about himself in the process. In the Cambridge study on cognitive behavior, they found that using CBT showed a 47% decrease in violent aggression with people with this disorder. I think that the ethics with this type of treatment are flawless. It does not involve anything experimental, intrusive, just a psychologist and the patient going through a simple cycle, exploring their emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Moving on to broader perspective, the final slide. I think that the show does an incredible job with this disorder. When we get endless inner monologue from Dexter working himself through simple social issues and analyzing why he struggles with them. We get to experience his thoughts when he discovers new information from his childhood. For example, I'm going to get rid of that. I think that the portrayal of disorders in this film help people be more understanding of it. Allows us to see all kinds of different disorders and be a lot more empathetic. I would not say that we necessarily need to understand them more, that we wouldn't understand them more. I think that as long as you are an open-minded and empathetic person, they might not have a disorder, in my opinion. In this case, horrible events have caused Dexter to be the way that he is. He had no control over the horror that he had witnessed. In my opinion, a lot of disorders do not need to be labeled, and since it creates so much stigma. Final slide is these citations.